Jennifer, how do you plan on making up the deficits in the city's revenue? Do you support raising taxes? Do you support increasing the city's utility rates? What other thoughts do you have?
Thank you for making that a separate question. I'm sorry if I'm talking a lot, but these are all very important questions. I want to make sure that you get a thorough answer. And believe me, I tried to make it less. But I'm a big advocate for a stable budget. I think I sort of started to allude to that. That covers all of our core services. We're mandated by our charter and also by the state statute to offer police, fire, water, sewer, and sanitation. But our council at a recent visioning session all agreed that in addition to those core services for which we're mandated to offer, provide, we also include the senior center, the marina, the rec center, parks, the casino, all of that. We have made a statement, the current council, that those are all part of our core services. So when I say that we need a budget that covers core services, that's including those that are absolutely essential, and also the ones that we have become used to in terms of, and the library. I think I forgot to say the library, and the library. So if you thought I missed it, I didn't. And but we need, we're considered a full-service city, and we're a small city to be a full-service city, but it comes with some costs, of course. My position on the millage has been, back when I was with, we started Gulfport Progressives, I started saying this, which is, because it was right when the property values were going up. I said, no, wait a second. The property values are going up. We should reduce the millage rate and get the same amount of tax revenue. Instead, we were keeping the same millage rate, and we're getting more and more money, and we were getting more and more ambitious about what we wanted to spend that money on. And now we have this $10 million, general reserve budget that we need to really be paring down a little bit each year. So that's my position, is that when it goes, property values go up, millage rate goes down, property values go down, millage rate needs to go up to keep that, so that you have a pretty stable tax bill from year to year. And we know that our core services, that as I'm defining them, which is pretty broadly, are actually covered. But there are other ways that we can look at the budget too. And I know that Jim said that we should never increase our millage rate, but when you're increasing it to just make sure that you have the same amount of funds from last year, most people will not see a property tax increase. And in fact, this year I was surprised, because the first year we haven't had pushback, and we increased our millage rate to 4.0, which is closer to where it used to be, where we could really fully fund all of our basic services. But obviously you can decrease costs. I think we should look at our overtime costs. Overtime was one of the things that hurt dispatch because we were so lean. They had to pay a lot of overtime in order to cover people's sick time and vacation time and everything else. But there are other departments that really need to look at that closely. An example of, we get different revenues. Our city manager is trying to negotiate right now so that we can provide fire services. We have really excess capacity in our fire department because you have to have a certain number of fire personnel and trucks, regardless of how much use you need. And so we want to get that, the area that didn't want to be, they didn't want to come and be part of us, annexed by us, but they would like to get our lower rates for fire service. So we're hoping that the county will facilitate that to happen. And that's not increasing any of our staff and any of our other operating expenses, but it's giving us more revenues. So that's sort of an obvious win. I think even when we did things like increase the GEMS bus service, we already have the vans, we already have the drivers, but then again, now we're getting more riders because we're providing even more service to seniors. So that's another way that you can increase revenues. I think there's always a role to look for contracting. I always look at contracting. I know people like to say outsourcing, and outsourcing, as I understand it, is things like we did this at the state level. We outsourced children and families, and it was a disaster because they just said, here, take all this millions of dollars and take care of our adoption funds, take care of making sure children aren't getting abused, do all of that, and it was a statewide mess. And contracting to me means that we have a we're very much hands-on in terms of saying, this is what we want, this is our expectation, and you need to meet that expectation, and if you don't, we're going to work with you or we're going to look elsewhere. So we contract with Pinellas County Library Services for certain functions. We contract with our water and sewer through St. Petersburg. We contract cleaning of all our buildings and our public restrooms. All of those are outside contracts. So it's not necessarily a bad word. If you manage it correctly, and it makes sense to do it, where you can actually get more service for less money. Every time we look at contracting, every time there is attrition in a particular position in the city, we do everything we can to make sure that if we're going to affect people's jobs, that they get another job in the city. And when we did this with dispatch, we worked very strongly with the sheriff's office, and everybody was guaranteed, and those who wanted the job at the sheriff's office went in there at their current salary. So, I mean, we're very responsible that way. And the last thing is increasing fees. The only thing I feel uneasy about is in the last budget is that we just pretty much did a blanket 10% increase on all our fees. I think it would have made more sense to do market studies on each area, the rec center. I worked with Jim O'Reilly to get voluntary pre-K at the rec center. That's free money. It's tax money, of course, so it's not really free, but it's free money from the state to pay for preschool students to get a really good step-up early intervention program right there in our wonderful tot time. Tot time in the rec center is amazing. You have kids out there, people would pay thousands of dollars to have a preschool right there on the water with dolphins and everything looking at them. And now we've had that expanded. We're getting all this. We're tripling the rate that we're getting per student, and the families don't pay anything because it's covered by the state. So I think we should look at fees a little bit more specifically. And I always every year ask the staff, ask Jim to ask the staff to come up with new ways to make things less expensive.